Welcome back to Just for Kicks. I'm Chris Marlowe. The year was 1950. The result was so astonishing, nobody believed it. The United States had beaten England in World Cup soccer. How did the American team do it? Let's find out from Kevin Cusick.
Thanks, Chris. Looking back through the sports history books, 1950 was truly a year to remember. Casey Stengel led the New York Yankees to yet another World Series championship. In football, Cleveland beat the LA Rams long before there was a Super Bowl, and Johnny Parsons won the Indianapolis 500 with a speed of 123 miles per hour. But in soccer, there was an event that happened in 1950 people still talk about even today. On June 29, 1950, in the Brazilian mining town of Belo Horizonte, David was about to meet Goliath. On one side, the English national team came to Brazil as the founder of the modern game and the country many expected to win the championship, showcasing world-class stars like Billy Wright and Tom Finney. On the other side was the ragtag amateur U.S. team, a squad put together 1 week prior to the tournament. They played only 2 games together as a team before going to Brazil. The U.S. team's chances of winning the World Cup that year were about 500 to 1. Their chances of beating England were about 1,000 to 1.
We were just a bunch of players that gathered together for maybe a few games, practice games, so we weren't considered just along for the ride, really, because at that time in 1950, most of the guys were sandlot players. We only had actually, I think, one college player, which was Walter Bohr.
The game to England seemed more a formality than a soccer match. John Thompson wrote in London's Daily Mirror, the only unanswered question seemed to be the size of the American defeat. England was more concerned about its next match against Spain.
If you were a betting man, you would probably bet that if we played England, 10 times, that would have been the only time we beat them, and we probably wouldn't have come within, 2 or 3 goals.
But 37 minutes into the first half, Ed McIlvaney directed a throw-in to Walter Barr. He carried it for 10 yards and took a shot. Joe Gettons redirected it with his head, beating British goaltender Bert Williams, who was off balance and off guard. The shot now is known as the goal heard round the world.
To me, the best thing I could say about that is that these things happen in sports, and thank God they do, because you have to go out and play the game. I don't care how good you are, and I don't care how bad you are. You still have to go out and play, and there's always that possibility that the underdog can win.
The English team outshot the Americans by a 3-to-1 ratio, missing one opportunity after another. But the U.S. team held on, pulling off one of the greatest shocks in the history of the World Cup, beating the seasoned professionals from England 1-0.
It was just an unbelievable happening. I don't think, there are upsets, but I don't think there's ever been one quite like that before. Nor in the future World Cups will there be one like this, because it's harder to get in the World Cup now. More nations compete, and you actually will not get a team like England up here and the United States at that time way down there with such a wide difference between, beforehand, the value of their players and everything else.
When the game ended, the Brazilian madness in the stands poured onto the field and they carried the U.S. team out of the stadium. But when news of the game was transmitted over the wires, it was thought to be an error. Local papers around the world thought maybe the score was 10-0 or 10-1 in favor of England.
When you're playing and you're beating a team and you say, gee whiz, we almost beat Spain a couple of days ago and here we are beating England, you kind of get high and you kind of, a little dream world. And I think some of the players were getting a little tired, but they held on. Before you know it, we had a winner.
It was just one of those games that our defense was playing a tight game. Our halfback line was very tight, and there was a lot of chemistry in our ball club. So, like I said, we had nothing to lose, all the game.
Harry Keogh, Frank Borghi, and Gino Periani still get together in their hometown of St. Louis to talk about that game. Walter Barr says the game has taken on greater proportions as time goes by. He returned to Belo Horizonte 25 years later and relived that famous goal.
It hasn't changed my life at all, other than every time the World Cup comes up, every 4 years they replay past World Cups, and since this game is considered one of the bigger upsets in World Cup history, I sort of got a little bit of the limelight along with my remaining teammates.
The U.S. team faced Chile next, but melted away in the 110-degree heat, losing 5-2. Uruguay went on to beat Brazil in the final, and the Americans were eliminated with 1 win against England, 1 loss versus Chile, and 1 tie against Spain. But after it was all over, the soccer world now wondered, maybe the Americans really can play football. The soccer field here at Penn State University bears the name of Bill Jeffrey, head coach of the 1950 team. It's a memory that will always burn bright in the history of American soccer. The next big challenge for the United States is to successfully host the World Cup when it comes here in 1994. But since we're the host country, we have an automatic bid. So maybe the next big challenge is to have at least a victory or two as big as the one back in 1950. Chris, back to you.
Thanks, Kevin. What a team that was. Next week, Kevin Cusick will report on the Carney connection. 3 players on the USA national team, all from that small little town. Now we're going to take time out. When we come back, more on Just for Kicks after this. Stay with us.